Welcome to the land of the Lawn Weenies. I am your host, Sai Syker. I am here to read today Phone Ahead by David Lubar. Normally, Joe wouldn't pick through garbage, but he'd glimpsed the edge of a shiny plastic case in the trash basket on the corner of Watson Street. Electronics, he thought, as he leaned over and reached inside. Oh yes, whatever it was, it certainly wasn't trash. Who would throw out a cellular phone, Joe wondered, as he pulled the object from its nest of crumbled papers and crushed cans. Probably doesn't work, he said to himself, as he flicked the on-off switch and held the phone to his ear. That's when he got his first surprise of the day. He heard someone talking. Joe listened for a moment, then said, "Hello? Hey, I found this phone. Can you hear me?" But the voice on the other end didn't respond to him. The man was speaking to someone else. "I just saw it on the news," said the man. "Luckily everybody got out," a woman said. "Can you imagine what would have happened if there were lots of people in the bus station when the fire started? That would have been terrible." The bus station, Joe thought. He hadn't heard about anything about a fire, and he hadn't heard any sirens, but if the man just saw it on the news, it might still be happening. Joe had to go see. He switched off the phone and slipped it in his pocket. Then he jogged to the bus terminal. "They must be crazy," he said when he reached the station. There was no sign of fire. Joe looked at the clock on the bank across the street. It was 74 degrees. It was 10 in the morning. He went home and put the phone in his desk drawer. That evening, Joe was walking through the living room as his parents watched the news. "A fire broke out today at the bus station around 5 this evening," the announcer reported. Joe couldn't believe it. He listened to the rest of the story, trying to compare the details to what he had heard on the phone. "No one was hurt, but the station was badly damaged. We'll have more information on the 11 o'clock report." A shiver ran down Joe's back, then twisted through his stomach. He rushed to his room and grabbed the phone. He switched it on, but all he got was dead silence. He tried the phone again an hour later. The line was still dead, but on the next try, right before he went to bed, Joe heard the two people talking again. "I just hate this weather," said the man. Joe looked out the window. Stars twinkled in the cloudless sky. "I don't mind the rain," the woman said, "but ever since I was a kid I hated thunder." Joe could hear a crackle over the line like there was lightning in the air. Definitely crazy, he thought, as he turned off the phone and went to sleep. 6 hours later, clouds filled the night sky. A heavy rain fell. The first thunderclap woke Joe. Lightning danced across the clouds in jagged flashes. Maybe they aren't crazy, Joe thought as he watched the storm. Joe started checking the phone as often as he could. Whatever the man and woman talked about, the weather, the news, the latest episode of their favorite television show, happened just as they said. But each event took less time to come true than the last. The future Joe overheard in the phone kept getting closer to the present, but none of it was worth anything to him. The next day, Joe finally heard something exciting. "Imagine that," the man said. "All those bags of money lying there, right on Adams Street, just past the corner at Main. Can you believe it was there for over an hour before the police found it?" the woman asked. "The robbers must have dropped the loot when they were getting away. Good thing Adams isn't a busy street. It's still pretty amazing nobody picked up the money." Joe switched off the phone. This was better than knowing the weather or the news. This was information he could use. Main and Adams Street were less than half a mile away. Joe started running. He reached Main and headed toward Adams. As he turned the corner, he saw a bulging canvas bag scattered across one side of the street. Joe ran down the block, his eyes fixed on the sacks. A police car came speeding past. It slid to a stop right next to the money. 2 officers jumped out, grabbed the sacks, and tossed them into the truck. "Stupid phone," Joe said as he watched the patrol car drive away. He was so frustrated he almost threw it in the garbage. What good was knowing the future? He asked himself. What if he couldn't get there in time? Joe started walking home, holding the phone in his hand. He kept wondering what the man and woman were discussing right now. Probably chatting about the weather, he thought. Or something stupid like a new movie. But maybe it was something really important. Joe felt like he was holding on to the last piece of popcorn from a box. He couldn't leave it untasted. He had to try it again. As he started across Bridge Street, he switched on the phone. "Tell me something I can use," he thought. "That's all I want. Tell me something important. Just one small thing." He held the phone to his ear. They were talking. Joe relaxed. Hearing the voices was like running into old friends. "Poor kid," the woman was saying. There was a sadness in the woman's tone that caused Joe to stop walking and listen carefully. "Yeah, I saw it on the news. It's a shame he died." Joe shook his head. "Who cares?" he muttered. "This doesn't sound like anything useful or important." But he kept his phone to the ear. He couldn't help himself. He was right in the middle. He was just standing there, the man said. Right in the middle of Bridge Street, by the place where the road curves. Imagine that. I wonder what was on his mind. They say he didn't even see the truck. Truck? Joe thought as he heard the blare of a horn and the shriek of large tires skidding around the curve behind him. What truck? "Cool," Lisa said as she looked down onto the garbage can next to a lamppost on Bridge Street. She reached inside, wondering why someone would throw away a cellular phone. "Probably doesn't even work," she said. She switched it on and held it to her ear. She smiled as she heard voices. This, she thought, could be very interesting.